potato ready to drop. I got a hot potato, somebody stop me. It's a molto caldo, fuori dal forno. It's a hot potato, no ifs, ands, or maybe.
Stefan trifft. Herzlich willkommen in Baden-Baden in der Klangvilla Schellbach hier bei SG Akustik. Heute haben wir einen ganz besonderen Gast, nämlich Touraj Moghaddam, angereist aus England. Herzlich willkommen.
Thank you.
Touraj.
Thank you for
nice
having
to meet
me.
you here.
Very nice to see you again.
We did a lot of work already. We listened to these record players, to the whole system. And just to present you a little bit, Touraj is the CEO and owner of Vertere. Vertere is a product making record players, cables, preamplifiers for phono, special mechanics, shelves underneath. Correct me if I say something wrong.
Yeah? No worries.
And we, as real vinyl enthusiasts, we have a lot of fun with his products. Yeah, and we did some films already. We've shown the DG1, the smallest model, the MG1. We did videos. We just can see it here with the QR code in the picture. Very, very interesting, but very special products as well. And what that's all about, maybe we can talk about that with Touraj. And I know you from long time ago. I founded the company 35 years ago. And at this time, I think it was 89. Yeah?
85.
Yeah, but my company was founded 89.
Right.
And your first company, Roksan, was founded 85. It was very interesting products. I spent a lot of time adjusting and installing these products, almost Xaxis record player, but later also smaller ones as radius and with a Tabriz and Tabrizi arm. And in these products, what was absolutely new in these times was the mechanical decoupling technique used even in the tone arms. You remember with the spike on the counterweight and all these things. Very, very interesting. And so the years passed by, digital techniques came, you constructed some very special CD players, like the DP1 and Atessa later. Yeah, it was so very, very special. Even optical, it looked like a spaceship. Really interesting. And we played that with Lin DA converters. It was crazy good combination. Lin began at these times to do studio technique with a numeric system.
Yes.
Put it there, it was very, very interesting. But that's history. So maybe you can tell us something more, maybe that I know you from Roksan. What did you do before? How did you came to this very, very detailed inventing things in this direction?
It really was a coincidence because at the time when I began to look at how a record player functions, I was doing postgraduate at Imperial College on a high-speed wind turbine. Nothing to do with audio. But I did have a very good audio system at the time. In fact, I sold my Scirocco to buy that.
It was a Scirocco?
Yeah, I did have a Scirocco.
Nice car.
Very nice.
Version 1?
The original.
Okay, good car.
The original with the straight back. The ST, I think it was, or something. Yeah, it was a lovely car. Yeah.
Nice car. And you studied something about engineering?
No, I did mechanical engineering at Imperial. But my last project there was a vertical axis wind turbine for my thesis, and I was responsible to design the wind turbine from the gearbox to all the measurements and everything, tower, put it up
with all the bearings.
Yeah, everything had to go, and it was, to be fair, it was quite unique for the time, because this was not a very large wind turbine, but it had to run at 600 RPM at design point. Now that is fast. 600 RPM is very, very fast. That's 20 times faster than your record player. And if you imagine 3.5 meters going 600 RPM, it can cause damage if there is too much strain on the blade and the blade breaks, for example. So I had the idea, rather than having a twin blade normal, to split the two blades and have them counterbalance. So they had counterweights on the back of them.
Okay.
And they could change.
Later we know everything about generators, but we have to come to
the audio. Yes.
How did you come to
well,
the audio theme?
That was the thing, because I was coming towards the end of that. I was doing that for 5 years, and I listened to a program with about Thelonious Monk, and I love his music. I think he's almost he's the best drummer pianist. The timing and everything is impeccable, but I couldn't get that from the hi-fi system. So I'd recorded the program and I played back the recording through the system, and it was in terms of understanding the music was better. So I knew it wasn't the electronics, I knew it wasn't the speakers, so it must be the source. So from that point, I started looking at the source and trying to understand what it is that makes that source very special.
Did you live in UK in this time?
Yes. I was in London. Yeah.
Okay, because maybe a lot of these thoughts about sources and hi-fi came from UK.
Maybe that's a possibility.
Name all the guys
but
all the time talking about source.
The history of the traditional suspended turntable, probably, again, if I'm not mistaken, was probably from AR, that they did this cross beam 3-point suspension. And then from that it went into the Thorens systems, that they started using cross beam with 3 springs, one opposite the motor, etc. And then it went into Ariston and then the Lane, and it grew into many different versions.
Maybe just to explain that, wir spielen ja hier an der Anlage komplett Name, also auch aus England, ein Kudos-Lautsprecher mit einer Titan 808. Wir sprechen ja hier gerade über Lin und Name auch. Es hat eine lange Historie und viel davon ist auch in die Lautsprecher eingeflossen. Also ich glaube, wir sind hier an so einem Level jetzt angelangt bei englischem Hi-Fi. Deswegen können wir jetzt auch über die Quellen sprechen, wenn das da als Wiedergabekette auch erledigt ist. Ne? I just said that we can now talk about sources. So just explain the equipment.
What the system. Yes, absolutely. Is, Yes, yeah.
Okay, and what did you do then, experiencing that all what is on the market is maybe not perfect?
It was difficult to try and gather information from the industry, as it was at the point that what the function of a record player is. And because with the wind turbine, I was doing a lot of measurements against theoretical.
But why did you look so much at record players? It was already the time when CD players were on the market, wasn't it?
Absolutely. But to be honest, the early CDs were just unbelievably unlistenable.
Yeah, they were.
And then even later, they still were quite unlistenable. And on the other hand, I had lots of vinyl already. And I had vinyl going back decades and decades. So it was a medium that you knew if you didn't break the disc, if you didn't damage the disc, even if I died and my children died, their children could still play it. You know, it's not something that would go out of...
And the CD 10 years after, all these silver things went off. Yeah, I had many of them.
Especially if the manufacturing is not very good, you can get reaction between the substrate and the plastic. That's very true.
Which record player did you use?
At that time I had a Lin name Triumph system.
Okay.
So I was, and I chose it not because of any other reason than listening to it and thinking that I like this. You know, I can relate to music, because most of the time you're listening to very different kinds of music, and the last thing you want is for the system to dictate to you what kind of music it can handle and what it can't. So my idea was find a system that can handle most music. Then in which case you're not dictated by the system, or you're less dictated by the system, and you can enjoy from pop to classical to rock to hard rock to metal.
And then, what was new in the success in comparison with the others?
Well, it was the approach, understanding of that there is no silver bullet that solves a problem. Like on the wind turbine, it was the same. Anything you design, the execution of the design is very important. The precision of manufacturing is very important. The materials used and so on are very important. But the most important is the fundamental design. If the fundamental design is flawed, it doesn't matter how well you make it. So you need to go back to the first principle.
Yeah, when I remember these times and looking now at the construction of these players, it's still complicated. Yeah, as in comparison with other players, they put a bearing platter on it and
I wouldn't say
look at the motor and everything. But here,
maybe you could look at it as being complicated. It's not so much complicated. It's maybe different. It's a different approach.
And for me, it was complicated.
Yes,
Just the motor bearing of the axis spent quite a time. Yeah?
True, but but you don't do this now. You know, at that time, I was using, for example, a plate mechanism to couple the motor to this plate rather than pass the noise into the belt. You take it into the chassis, and you could fix it. But if you fix it, then you had other problems, which meant the speed would not be consistent and so on.
So I think you spent a lot of time trying and trying and trying. It was very empirical, wasn't it?
Not at all, actually.
Ah, really?
It
worked from the first.
Absolutely. The first one I ever made was the one that we used to even go to other manufacturers. I remember Julian from Name with Paul, they came over to our office to listen to this. And then the first thing he did say, can you bring it down to Salisbury? And we took the same one down. And we sat down there, listened to it, and we went to his place to listen to it, etc. And the principle of it never changed. And in fact, some of the principles you find in what we have here.
So that's what I meant. Let's cue some years. What time did you leave Roksan, though?
Well, that was between 2006 and 2008. Between those 2 years, I left. It had nothing to do with having Vertere. In fact, at the time, I wasn't even sure whether I would continue. But it was the time when I had developed the HB cables for my own use. So the last products that I did at Roksan, M2 series, the Artemis 7, TMS3, etc., all of them were developed, finalized using the pulse the HB cable. They had no name at the time. It was just something that I used for listening to stuff.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about cables as well. But in what year you started though with Vertere?
2006.
Already?
Yeah. What happened was that it actually did start with the cables. What happened was that certain clients of ours, that they had very big systems, I was tuning their system using my cables, and then they asked, can they get these? And I said, they're not available.
Okay,
so
looks like we have to talk about cables. Okay.
No, we don't have
what's
to.
the situation now? I remember the first time, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, when you started to work with a German distributor with Andreas. Yeah.
Yes.
We compared cables from power supply. Also, I didn't even know that could make a difference, such a big difference. So cables are important. It's more the connector, it's the material of the cable.
No, it is how the cable is constructed. Again, it's the fundamental design of the cable, and it's not that the cable improves the sound or anything. Any product that you have in the system can only degrade what you begin with. It cannot add to it. It just takes away. You're trying to have a component that least damages the signal, whatever it is. And because of that, the idea behind the Vertere, having Vertere, was not so much, I want to make cables. At the time, I identified the connection between the items being the weakest link in our system. Mm-hmm. So I addressed that to bring it above the other parts, which will then open the window for making the next product. And the next product was not a cable, it was actually a tone arm. The reference tone arm was my first mechanical product. Not the record player, the tone arm. And that was because, again, in the playback system, I identified the tone arm as being the weakest link. So there was no point improving the platform if the pickup is not capable of resolving the resolution that you want. So when the reference tone arm came, then came the platform, the turntable RG1.
Yeah, okay. But it's also maybe not useful put kind of reference tone arm with very small tolerances, with the best bearings, with the best resonance response on a bad
turntable.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't classify a TMS3 as a bad player.
No.
I thought it was pretty good.
No. This already is a high-end player, yeah. But I mean, really a Torrance TD 160 or something like that to put there.
No, I understand. I
I
understand what you're saying. To be honest, the reference tone arm, originally when we brought it out, I had no expectation of the types of sales and things that we've had with it. I'm happy, I'm very happy about it, but originally it was a tool. It was for me to understand what I need to do with the platform. And once I had the platform, the first thing we did was to bring the SG tone arm.
Yeah.
So that reference
tone
Formula
arm,
One,
you
exactly.
downsize this maximum
engineer.
Quality to maybe.
But to some extent, the advantage of the reference tone arm was that it wasn't like a Formula One that after one race you have to rebuild the engine. You could actually put it on a turntable and use it for decades. So probably that made some of our clients, and to be fair, some of the first clients, they already had TMS3s, for example. Some of them, they had other turntables. I mean, it's been used from Trans Rotors to Air Force Ones to different record players.
Okay. And then when you compare your turntables, like the DJ1,
MG1.
As you see, this is one plate and sandwich. Yeah, here you have two, one stiff, I think, and the other one with suspension.
Yes, I mean,
and here's still more with the SG1.
Yeah, they got 4 plinths here, 3 plinths there, and 2 plinths on the DG1. Not unlike the cables, the conductors inside, there are several, And in order to down engineer it, you just lose some of them. It's almost like you start with a V12, you go to a V8, then you go to a 6, then you go to a straight 6, then you go to a 4-cylinder. It's similar to that.
Yeah.
You are not trying to reinvent the product, but you need to re-engineer it.
Yeah.
So when we go from
how do you do that? This is all about resonance, or not?
Well, the decoupling of the record player has two functions. One is to limit or reduce the externally induced movements in the system, like feedback, for example. And the second one is to work with the internally induced movements. Because once you have a motor driving a platter, and when you have a diamond which is being driven by the groove, they will have equal and opposite reactions. And it is quite a dynamic system. It's not a static system. And because it's a very dynamic system and there are many changes, and the fact that the interface between the diamond and the groove, you're talking in microns, it becomes very important how these movements impact on each other.
Yeah, and this is only the plinth or the base of the turntable. Then you have the bearing, the platter,
of course,
the motor
and the mounting of the motor, the belt itself.
So many
the
parts.
arm board that connects the arm to the record player,
and the power supply.
Absolutely.
For the motor. You use synchro motors.
The motor is responsible for your music, and the motor drive is what gives it the energy to do the job. So it's a little bit like if you say the record player is a loudspeaker, your motor drive is your amplifier.
Yeah, so I think maybe in comparison with cars, as you mentioned, when you have a real fast car, a real good car, where every second counts on big circuits, you have to spend a lot of money in suspension and everything. So that's maybe the same here. And it's really amazing how different your construction are in comparison with the rest of the world. I mean, is this to keep, how do you keep the energy in the system? Also, when you play music, the result, for me, it is most important that from bass to highs, everything that is in between, almost mid-range, has the same energy, the same intensity. And
it needs to be true to what was put on the record.
Yeah, and that's...
You put it on the record, we will try and take it out for you.
I would say that most of the normal hi-fi systems maybe play 60–70% of what's in there, even if they are expensive and good.
Honestly, I don't even, we may be even lower than that. I don't know. Even this.
I once had an experience with Gunther Paula. Yeah.
Yes.
We played the concerts with Sarah Kay here in Karlsruhe. I organized this with 500 people.
Yes.
Bowers and Wilkins, under Bowers and Wilkins flag, and we did this concert. And he did the recording.
Yes.
And he was sitting there with all his equipment, and he had a CD burning machine there. Yeah?
Yes.
And then he said, later you can have one.
Yes.
I said, okay, great. Yeah, but I give you two. One, can you see this here on my thing? This is the compression.
Yes.
of the music. Yes. This is a normal one. This is what
unlimited.
What is not sold.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Because all the equipment, even in cars, will blast. Yeah. So he gave me a version with 55% compression. This is a normal one.
Yeah, that's a normal. Yeah.
And then one without.
Yeah, unlimited for
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if I still have it, but this is amazing. Yeah, this is here when you have the record, or the first cutting, and or direct disc or all these things. Crazy what you can listen to.
Direct to disc is the best.
So to keep it simple for the audience, this is, I say it's complicated because you have so many parts. People think now a Bluetooth box is enough to play music, okay? And here we have a system with an external power supply, motor, plinth, platter, tone arm, and then, that was what we didn't mention.
The cartridge.
The cartridge. Cartridge is just a little box, can cost a lot of money. What's inside there and what is the secret? Why are your cartridges, and they are very specially good, Sabre, for example, it's a moving magnet.
Or dark
most people say this price class I only buy moving coil. But the result is amazing. What is your secret there?
Again, it's not a secret as such. Is the interface between the diamond and the vinyl is absolutely critical. Anything lost in that interface, you will never ever get it back. It's the same as a cutting of a lacquer.
Yeah.
The cutting point on the lacquer is critical.
But why are cartridges better than others? Because all the parts that are important inside, you can't see them with your eyes.
True, that's true, but it's almost like an engine in a car. When you're driving the car, you don't sit inside the pistons, but you can feel the power. You feel the power of the gearbox or the everything, chassis, whatever it is. With the for example, with a Sabre or Dark Sabre or X-Trax, and what we're trying to do is we are trying to present the diamond and the cantilever with as minimal a mass as possible, but rigidly linked to a much larger dynamic mass.
Okay.
So effectively, for example, when you look at the X-Trax, the chassis of the cartridge is more a part of the head shell than a part of the cartridge.
Okay.
So the generator is effectively inside floating with 4 contact points, and also we don't go short on the design of the cantilever, for example, or the design of the diamond, or who makes the diamond, who polishes the diamond, because all those things will effectively add to the end result.
That's what I meant, polishing diamonds. Yeah.
Oh, we don't. I mean, we're not specialists on that.
Yeah, but
we use the best people that we know.
Small. Also, I mean, people build up integrated circuits that are so tiny that we don't even see them with microscope. Yeah? So we are so small. So the effort on that makes the sound.
The diamond, the cantilever, the coil assembly, for example, you have, and the mechanics of the coil, how the coil moves with the suspension.
You think that, we met here in Baden-Baden, so we do the workshop now, the next days, we compare different record players, we compare phono stages, but what is your opinion about the difference of the digital sources to the analog ones at these days now?
Well, very similar. I mean, you can have a digital system that works very well. You can have a digital system that doesn't work very well at all.
But when you're on the same level of investment...
You can't beat vinyl.
Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to...
That's very simple, because whenever you're listening to a digital system, you need a digital product. So you have to have a digital to analog converter, for example. There would be some kind of server or a hard drive or something, a CD player, something that it is using very high frequency resonators, oscillators, crystals, etc., etc. And intrinsically, they produce huge amount of high frequency noise. They are unrelated to the music.
They're killing themselves.
Yeah, I mean they have gotten hugely better. I have no problem with digital. I'm not saying that digital is bad. In fact, many of the records that even we produce, we're using the digital, unlimited digital file to cut the lacquer.
Okay.
But what you have to realize is that if this process is done correctly, although the signal that is going into the lathe has got that high frequency content.
Do you remember when Lin started with digital power supplies and you put them in a total analog system, it was destroyed?
True, that is true.
But I think they learned with the time.
Yeah, of course, I mean all products get better, they can get better. But the nice thing about a vinyl cutting system is that the lathe itself is a natural filter for high frequency. It cannot cut those high frequencies. I mean, with the best will in the world, even if you do high half-speed cutting, etc., you may be able to cut 60, 65K, 70 maybe, at what level, who knows. So as soon as you go above that, there's no content. So if you play back a record that the source material was a high resolution file, the output from the cartridge has no high frequency content.
Yeah.
Whereas you play the same file through a digital product, all those things are there. You need to filter them, you need to do, and it becomes
that reduces the signal.
Yeah, it becomes a sort of like trying to damage control afterwards.
Yeah. There are different ways to find solutions for that. One is to make everything digital. I listen to the Technics amplifiers, they use ducts everywhere, and even the entrance of the power amp has now this digital circuit.
Sure.
The sound is not as I wish, but it's okay. But it doesn't.
But you can design good digital products. It's just that if you do end up with the vinyl from whatever is digital, invariably, if the cut is correct, if the production is correct, the vinyl will sound better. Sometimes
I sell systems for people who say, I don't want all these media mass and everything. I want an analog system with a record players and have fun with it.
Just a simple system.
And that's maybe the best way. So let's talk about the last part of the source. It's a phono stage.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We are coming out here with a very, very, very small
You're
signal.
talking fractions of millivolts, yes.
Even with a moving magnet system that makes maybe
4 or
1 or 2
millivolts.
millivolts up to 5, the MC is 10 times lower than the moving magnet, and they are both so small that when you have an electromagnetic small wind like this, your signal gets
corrupted,
corrupted.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's dead after. So this signal has to be transported via these cables on the tone arm to the phono stage.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why there is no silver bullet. Everything is a chain. And if you have a weak link in the chain, you're only as strong as that weak link. So the tone arm becomes important, the wiring inside becomes important, but when it comes into the phono stage is where you need to treat the signal. You're not just amplifying it. It's not like a preamp, power amp, where the signal is linear.
It's like a wellness center.
Because, sorry?
It's like a wellness center.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spa.
Health clinic.
Yeah.
Yes. It is.
Clinic.
It really is, because you change the frequency response for the cutting, because in order to get somewhere around 20-25 minutes per side on a long playing disc, you cannot cut linear. the bass frequency, the lower frequencies would be so large that you end up with maybe 10, 15 minutes maximum on a side.
And after, on the output of the phono stage, everything gets easier.
Yes, that's linear. That's a flat, should be a flat signal, not
quite
equalized.
stronger signal.
Absolutely. Any phono stage, you're amplifying in 1,000 to 5,000, 10,000 times.
You use transformers inside or not?
No, well, for the power supply we do, but not for the signal.
Yeah.
The signal is entirely done with either integrated circuits, and it goes through different sectors. And for example, with the Calon, we can even amplify the signal, incoming signal, up to 30 dB before we do anything to it. So before it goes through any linearization, it's already amplified. So you try to lose as much as the unwanted stuff and keep as much of the signal that you want to preserve.
At the high-end show in Munich, we already did the video with the new Calon, and you explained it. Yes. We show the QR code here for the interested audience. What's interesting next? What is your preferred speaker and amplifier equipment?
There are a good number of electronics and loudspeakers that over the decades and decades I've come across that they're incredibly good. I mean, there are so many. I mean, even we're using here Name Electronics, for example. I started the Roksan part using my Name Electronics at the time. I've had Name Electronics, I've had Roksan Electronics, I've had FM Acoustics Electronics.
And you listen to dynamic speakers or horns or electrostatic speakers?
Currently we're using normal dynamic speakers, but many of our distribution network or clientele, they have very varied systems, from incredibly large horn systems, for example, to very large dynamic speakers or electrostatics.
Horn systems, as you see the history, like Voice of the Theater or whatever, when they had a tube amplifier with 3 watts or something like that, and you have an audience of 500 people sitting in a cinema, mechanical is also very, very good. You have
I mean,
maybe a lot of distortion inside if it's not well done, but
yes, if it is not anything not well done, it is not worth considering. But if they are well designed and well executed, they have a lot of capabilities.
Maybe that's, I always call that it's maybe a loss, the use of technology, what we have now outside.
You mean like a lost art?
I mean the consciousness about quality, all these parts and everything, because you said every system, even if it's horn or electrostatic, when it's well done, it has a result that maybe makes fun and gives something more than cultural to the people. And that's what I mean, what we have now with Bluetooth speakers.
We have that everywhere. Convenience is beginning to kill the reality that we should be living in. But it changes. I think it's a bit cyclic. You may become a little bit overwhelmed with paying too much attention. For a short time, you may want convenience. But after that, you begin to realize that it's not fulfilling. It's not really giving you.
It's the opposite of smart home, because this is what the people, you can do that with quality as well, but you will never reach this. Also, we do not. We do installations in the whole house with invisible speakers, with everything, but it's far away from a good hi-fi system.
Yes, when you're having a systems which are based more on convenience, if you give it an analogy, it's a little bit like using a not enough high quality camera, taking a picture, but then saying, okay, I can Photoshop it.
For example. Yeah.
You know, so you post-process.
And 50 years ago, the people were trying and trying.
But if you start with a good camera,
yeah.
in fact, in some ways, learning to use the camera may be more difficult, but afterwards your life is very easy because you don't need to do all the post-processing. You already have the quality. Yeah. And you can't beat quality.
We shoot ourselves
in the foot.
In the virtual world, yeah, that is beside our reality. Yeah?
Yes.
The senses are working different in the virtual world, yeah? Because all the pictures you see, or you've been shown, change.
Yes, yes.
The feelings and the emotions you have. Here, with a system like that, you have it directly.
Yes.
And that affects you, and that
Absolutely.
makes a difference. And I think, correct me, but this experience is now a small part of the world. Yeah, that's maybe the problem.
But it's growing. You know,
again,
as I said,
maybe it's
because
growing
it is cyclic.
Again. Yeah, because people get bored. Yeah, without this.
You begin to realize what you're missing. You see, at the beginning, convenience takes over, but then slowly you realize I'm missing something here.
That's it. Yeah.
I don't get the same
but
emotional
that's a question
content.
of consciousness.
Absolutely.
Some have, some not. This is
But
a question of
get.
experience. Yeah, hopefully.
They will get.
What about the beginning of everything, the source of the source, the recording? Yeah, didn't you do things on Abbey Road and with your cablings and everything?
We are fortunate to have some relationship with some of the people who are either in music or they are in the production of music. For example, studios that they do, they're doing recording, for example, or you've got studios that they do mastering and cutting, and this relationship is really good, and it's two ways in some way. We learn a lot from what actually has gone into and all the care that has been taken to produce a proper cut for production of a LP, for example. And at the same time, the engineers who are giving us these almost invaluable pieces of plastic to enjoy when we play back, they also begin to realize that, we have actually put a lot into the vinyl. We didn't think this detail, this resolution could be there, but it is. So it gives them a new beginning of improving what they're doing. And the minute they improve, it gives us a beginning of, we can actually make our record players better, so we can extract more.
And that's what source means for me. There it begins, and then we have to keep it, the best possible.
Absolutely.
And in the best case, it comes out from our speakers. There's a lot of fun. Touraj, thanks a lot.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. We will have fun the next days here.
I sincerely hope so, and I know we will.
Ja, liebe Hi-Fi-Freunde, das war's auch schon für heute mit Stefan Trifft und Touraj Moghaddam, der uns hier in unserer Klangvilla beglückt hat. Ich hoffe, Sie konnten einiges mitnehmen hier an Informationen. Ich persönlich fand das unglaublich interessant. Mehr Informationen zu den Produkten von Vertere unterhalb des Videos, wie immer. Es würde mich sehr freuen, wenn Sie diesen Kanal abonnieren würden, auch das nächste Mal wieder reinschauen, wenn wir hier so einen Stargast Erfinder haben aus der Hi-Fi-Technik oder ein Produkt vorstellen. Bis demnächst.